You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, ep046. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear a word they're saying. Only the echoes of my mind. People stop and staring.
Hey, dust off your pinstripe suits and load up your Tommy guns. This week, we're talking a piece of the action, see? We're your host, Jeff Hewlett.
And this is Craig Cohen, see?
Ah, nice. Oh, this is a fun episode. I've been looking forward to talking about this one.
Yes, a piece of the action.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic, I think. You know, we hit a run of episodes here where you got a couple of the more memorable comedy episodes.
Yeah.
You know, this and Tribbles are probably the funniest ones.
Yeah, and you could probably argue that this is the one with more of a straight up comedy feel to it than even Tribbles.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
you know,
this is
laugh for laugh or intended laugh for laugh.
Yeah, really. You could put this up against any of the unintentionally funny episodes and see which ones are funnier.
Yeah.
But not much in the news this week. One thing that grinds my gears, if you will, there has been a San Diego Comic-Con Star Trek model ship exclusive announced, which is the USS Excelsior. So from the Trek films, and it is supposedly a battle-damaged version, the version that you see in Star Trek 6, I believe. And like I said, it is a Comic-Con exclusive. So that means if you're unable to make it to Comic-Con, which is probably most of us, you're going to be paying some lovely inflated reseller prices for these things in the very near future.
Yeah, I bet you some of the vendors in Vegas will be.
I guarantee it. You'll probably be talking $100 or something like that, $75, $100. Depends what they're charging at Comic-Con for them, but yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know who these benefit. You know, it really, because nobody really makes out on these things financially, except the resale market where the original rights holder doesn't make a dime off of it. So this is going to be some kind of limited run, I'd imagine. And they're going to sell it for whatever price they sell it out. And then for years to come, people are going to be bouncing these back and forth, and the price is probably going to get higher and higher.
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I've seen these before. There were some Transformers reissue exclusives that were done. They were like larger Transformers, like larger versions of the original Gen 1 Transformers. And I saw a few that were Comic-Con and other con exclusives at other conventions at the vendor tables, and they're like $125, $150. Like, there's no way I'm spending that kind of money on that.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a shame, and it's funny now because Comic-Con itself is starting to get pretty hard to get into. So you almost have to hit the lottery twice. You have to get into Comic-Con.
Yep. And
then you have to be one of the people that actually has the opportunity to buy this exclusive item.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guess that's the world of retail we're living in. Yeah. But on the good side of that, Diamond Select, who have issued some fantastic Trek toys and figurines in the past. In fact, I have a full set of the Diamond Select original series crew members on my desktop here.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
They're amazing. And, you know, very cool, very articulated, a lot of great movement. You can pose them in a lot of ways. They all come with phasers, tricorders, and communicators. You know, really great. So they are reissuing the Wrath of Khan Enterprise model.
Nice.
Yeah, and it looks really, really cool from what I see. There's a little video posted here. I'll put it in the show notes. I have the Diamond Select original series Enterprise on top of my desk here. It's a pretty sizable ship model. It's really nice. And I look forward to picking up the Wrath of Khan version of the Enterprise. So I have the original and the updated movie style
I'll definitely be grabbing that.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It looks like the nacelles light up with some blue lights, and there's some sound going on there, and yeah, it looks like a really, really nice piece.
Oh, excellent. When's that supposed to be coming out?
I don't see any date on that, but I'll probably check on the Diamond Select website. Maybe they have a date in the coming weeks or so. I can't imagine it would be too far off, because this video that I see here on Trek Today has a fully working model that they're demonstrating. So I would imagine it's in production at this point.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So I'll make a note of when it actually comes out, and we'll talk about it again on the show here.
Yeah.
So that's it for the news. What else we got going on, Craig?
Well, much like we did at the end of Doomsday Machine, where we had Vernon Wilmer on to talk about his love of this episode, at the end of this episode, we're going to have two folks on who are very fond of this episode. And we're going to have Ken Mills returning to the show. Ken, if you didn't hear him on our Mirror supplemental episode, please go back and listen to that, because that was a great discussion we had regarding Mirror. And Ken is just a super guy, fan of the show, and we also co-host the Monkeys podcast with him, Zilch.
Yep. And
in addition, we're going to have Ken, friend of Ken, soon-to-be friend of ours, Bryan Taylor, on the show. So they're both going to be sort of sharing the reasons why we should all love a piece of the action.
Well, sounds pretty good to me. So in order to get there, we need to do our commentary first. You ready?
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right, okay. Air date for the original episode, January 12th, 1968. Remaster, April 28th, 2007.
And we've got the NBC press release here from December 21st, 1967. The superior technology of the Enterprise crew is temporarily unable to cope with the gangster tactics of the planet Iosha 2 in a piece of the action, a drama on NBC Television Network's Star Trek Colorcast.
Very cool. And we'll get started in our scene-specific commentary for the piece of the action in 3, 2, 1. All right. Boilerplate flyby. A little bit different than the original unremastered episode, in that I believe that the original one, the planet was like a more greenish hue, and you got a bit of a tighter close-up on the back of the ship as it approached.
Yeah, this one looks more like Earth.
And, yeah, I think they wanted to make it look more like a Class M planet, if you will.
It's interesting that they play with the shot compositions a little bit on the remaster, the exterior shots, which I think is pretty cool that they didn't feel locked into what they had done with the original model work.
Yeah, and a lot of the original ones were reused shots from other episodes as well, so you didn't always get fresh shots of the ship flying around. So with the remasters, it seems like they actually did dedicated clips for each episode.
Yeah, and that might even be what their intention was when they went in, where they said, well, we don't have to work with the limitations that they did, but they're still doing everything in a very similar style.
Yeah. So we just heard Chekhov's only lines in the entire episode.
Yeah.
So Chekhov doesn't get much of a part in this, which is a little bit different than what we've been seeing in previous episodes, where he's been pretty front and center.
Yeah.
This is more of a Trinity episode, where it's a Kirk, Spock, McCoy team up down on the planet, and you got Scotty up on the ship doing a few things. But this is definitely one of those the holy trifecta.
Yeah, and they jumped right into things. So Kirk's talking with a guy down on the planet, Oxmix.
Great name.
Yeah. And they learn that a ship called the Horizon, the Enterprise is looking for them, right?
Yeah, they went missing after they left the planet, and turns out that the planet claims they left 100 years ago, but then the Enterprise says, we just got the message now because it was sent on regular terrestrial type radios, so not subspace frequencies, so it took a long time to get where they were going. And supposedly the Ioshians are an intelligent species that Spock says are very likely to imitate. so that you're getting a little bit of a foreshadow there about what we're going to see when we get down on the planet.
Yeah. So does that mean that there's another horizon in the fleet, or that was the thing that confused me, because you think that like Spock would have known, or Kirk would have known, that the Horizon was a ship that hadn't been around for decades.
Well, I think that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's a little bit confusing because they literally just got the message, and maybe they assumed that it was just sent. But I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Do you see this this little beam into the middle of the street?
Yeah.
Kind of gave them a little Star Trek 4 double dumbass on you moment.
And this is funny because this is where they sort of really play with the continuity, or this is where Stardate comes in, because if I remember correctly, the City on the Edge of Forever was what? No Stardate or unknown Stardate?
Yeah, well, this episode also, there's no Stardate referenced in the actual episode itself.
All right.
But the Stardate for this was taken from an early draft.
Okay, because it seems here like they're not familiar with the past in terms of, you'd think if they had experienced what they experienced in the City on the Edge of Forever, they wouldn't be like, oh, I've seen pictures of, times like these where City on the Edge of Forever takes place within a decade or so of where they're quote unquote at in a piece of the action. So it just seemed, it seemed odd to me. It must have been odd for viewers in the 60s to think that, not realize that this show was more of a little loose with their continuity, and you were actually not really watching things really sequentially.
That's true. Well, the funny thing about this episode, though, is that Roddenberry actually came up with the idea for this episode on one of his very, very early proposals, and he had called, it was like a one-sentence synopsis that it said President Capone on it.
Yeah.
And it also was supposed to wind up being an original first series episode, and I think they had retitled it The Syndicate, and it didn't wind up happening because they got involved with the Man Trap, and it kind of got sidelined.
Yeah.
And the script wound up coming back in the second season, and they said, hey, why don't we polish this up and make it? So that's kind of how it got where it was.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed that I wanted to ask you is, this is, I think, one of the only episodes where they actually say the name of the episode in the episode itself.
Maybe. I'll have to go back and look at a few. I know I can think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah,
that was Miri,
okay.
as they say her name.
Yeah,
but...
well, like Shore Leave too. I don't really. That's too like kind of a generic. But I wasn't sure if they said Space Seed in that episode or not. It almost feels like
no, I don't think they did. Well, Spock does mention the seed that they planted and coming back to see it later, but I don't think he called it a space seed.
Yeah, but this definitely seemed like it jumped out when they said the title.
Yeah, well, you wonder if the title was just derived from that line, the piece of the action,
Yeah.
So you have to wonder if it was the title came first or the line came first, the chicken and egg.
Yeah. So they've beamed down onto this planet that is sort of has an obsession with guns.
It would appear so. I mean, everybody seems to be some sort of a mobster, or a gangster, and they all have either Tommy guns or handguns.
Yeah.
Even the women.
Yeah.
Seem to have guns. Here's one right here. She's got it in a really neat looking leather holster.
Yeah.
And it's a handgun. Two women. There's another one just walked up, and they both have them sheathed in holsters. But it looks like there's some sort of mob rule going on here, because these women are talking about how they paid their protection money, and they have all kinds of grievances, and they're not getting what they're paying for.
Yeah, well, they want the laundry truck, too.
Yeah, exactly. And the truck hasn't been around in a while. So look at this little meat and produce store there with some meat hanging in the window. They did a pretty good job with the backlot set there. Pretty cool stuff. And there you got a chick with a gun strapped to the inside of her thigh.
Yeah.
So we see a heck of a lot of guns here, but I guess we're supposed to understand that these people actually made all of those guns on that planet, right?
Yeah. Now watch the pool game here.
Okay.
This guy's not playing any kind of
No, he's picking up the cue ball. He's moving it around.
But then there's points where he won't even be shooting the cue.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't pay close enough attention to the pool games. I just I say move the cue ball, and I was like,
Yeah, there's a couple shots where he moved it again. I guess when you're the boss, though, you can move the cue ball wherever you want.
Yeah, that's the way he plays.
Yeah.
But now I love the way Kirk looks at the pool cue like he has no idea what that thing is.
Yeah.
I guess billiards doesn't exist anymore in the 23rd century, huh?
I guess it would be kind of hard to play billiards on a starship.
Yeah, well, you gotta wait. I guess you gotta wait for the holodeck. Then you can play in the holodeck. But I'm sure they didn't have. Well, they have a bowling alley on the Enterprise that didn't die. Oh, here he goes. He's actually hitting the blue ball instead of the cue ball.
Yeah.
Wonder what that's about.
Yeah, I bet you that guy might not have known how to play pool. I mean,
maybe not, or maybe it was just maybe the director just told him to mess around and
yeah,
you know, he didn't pay more attention to his dialogue than the actual game. So interesting little factoid about that book. You know, the Chicago Gangsters of the 20s.
Yeah,
you actually see a copy of that in an Enterprise episode as well, kind of an homage to this episode of the original series. And that episode happens to they also happen to have a reference to a communicator being left on a planet, behind on a planet, but actually has much more serious repercussions in that Enterprise episode.
Yeah.
than McCoy leaving his communicator behind at the end of this one.
Yeah.
But
so this actor here playing Oxmix is Anthony Caruso. Died in 2003 at the age of 86. Got over 100 film and TV credits, including a lot of westerns. Wagon Train, Bonanza, Rawhide, The Wild Wild West, and then the courtroom drama Perry Mason, to name a few. But that list really made me remember how big westerns on television were in the late 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. It's like you probably couldn't flip the channel on a weeknight and not hit a Western.
Oh, my grandfather loved those shows.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much the culture can change. You know, I mean,
they'll probably come back. I mean, a lot of these things are cyclical. I mean, I can't imagine there'll be a day where we won't see Westerns on TV again.
Yeah.
Right now the craze is, vampires. And I'm sure that tide will turn at some point in the next couple of years and give way to whatever new trend there will be. And
they could do vampire cowboys.
Yeah, but I guess they've taken enough liberties with vampires now. They let them out in the daytime, so I guess you could have a vampire cowboy. But back again to the book, they say that I found it was cool. They said the book was published in 1992.
Yes,
which was the year I graduated high school.
Same here.
So
I don't remember that being in my my curriculum.
Yeah, no, not at all. But I thought that was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah,
and they use star dates so that they can gloss over actual dates. But I like how they actually have references in time, like 1992.
Yeah. Well, I assume that there weren't star dates until a certain point. Like, I don't think they went back and retroactively assigned star dates to...
Oh, no. Sure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they use star dates as a plot convenience tool so that they don't have to reference actual dates, but then they would reference a date like 1992.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost didn't have to say that.
Yeah, like, it's their way of protecting their future, but then, like you said, like in Space Seed, they even referenced that the eugenics wars happened in the 1990s.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just said the book was published 300 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
It would have served the same purpose, but you actually reference a definite point in time, so that would put the audience in a place where they can sort of think, oh, this book is going to be published in 20 some odd years from the time they're watching this episode.
Yeah,
it's a little bit odd. And McCoy actually makes a reference about that book being their Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So another religious reference on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Not a heck of a lot of them, but that's one of the few.
Mm-hmm. So Oxmix is transfixed by the technology that Kirk and Spock and McCoy beam down with. He's fascinated by the communicator.
Yeah, he's already twisting the dial on the communicator right now.
Yeah, he's calling up to Scotty, who's going to do some great work here, James Doohan. Just, I mean, just the facial expressions when he's delivering his lines here are just, a perfect illustration of what a great actor Doohan was.
Yeah, there's a lot of great comedic moments with him doing the I don't understand what you're saying shtick.
Yeah.
In this ep, there's that's 20% of the humor right there is Scotty's looks and his puzzled responses, especially when Kirk gets into the gangster gear and gangster motif, and he's talking to Scotty over the radio a lot, and Scotty's like, "Oh, I don't really understand, but okay."
And I like the shot looking down on Oxmix. It's kind of neat because you got Scotty up in the, above the planet in the Enterprise, and the shot was looking down on Oxmix and his girl. So it was kind of a cool directorial choice to have them looking down, which almost indicated how the conversation was working.
Yeah, I noticed that before, and I really like I like that choice as well. It kind of gives you a sense that they're talking up towards the ship and back down towards the planet.
Yeah, we might as well talk real quick about director James Comack, who died in 1997 at the age of 73. Producer, director, writer, nominated for 2 Primetime Emmys, the first for The Courtship of Eddie's Father and the second for Welcome Back, Kotter, both for Outstanding Comedy Series. And he also directed Porky's 3. So an interesting filmography that if that doesn't have your interest peaked to go to his IMDb page, I don't know what is.
I don't recall ever seeing Porky's 3. I know I've seen Porky's 1 and 2, but I don't recall ever seeing 3.
Yeah.
Not that I remember much about them, but see, now this particular scene I really, really enjoyed. This is a great example of Kirk thinking on his feet.
Yeah.
He's able to switch into this mode where he can use his, I guess, futuristic intelligence, if you will, and his savvy to, put himself into a position where he can talk on a level that these guys, these mobsters can understand, but he can use his intelligence to outsmart them in a way.
Yeah.
So, and I think this scene is great to illustrate how much easier it is for Kirk to get out of this type of a situation than it would be for Spock to talk his way out, because Spock has a hard time playing along with this.
Yeah, well, Spock couldn't invent a game like Fizbin.
Right. So Kirk is just kind of rattling off a game off the top of his head and, giving all these ridiculous circumstances and you play this card on Tuesday and you play this card on Wednesday and you don't play this if it's raining. So the guy gets 2. This is the funny part, that the guy gets 2 jacks.
Yeah.
And Kirk says, no, if you get another jack, you're disqualified.
Yeah.
Right? But then the guy gets another jack, and Kirk says it's a great thing. He doesn't disqualify him.
Yeah. And it's funny because this guy follows along with the arbitrary rules that Kirk is making up, which is pretty funny. It shows that this guy has a pretty keen mind for gaming.
Yeah, he starts to get a little confused here near the end.
Yeah.
But Kirk is giving out a lot of conflicting.
But it's dark out.
Yeah, when it's dark out. But I just found it fascinating that Kirk says if you get the 3rd jack, you're disqualified. Then gives him a 3rd jack and says, "Oh, how lucky you are." Yeah. So I think this. I wonder if this part was scripted or if Shatner was just kind of riffing or how that worked. I wonder if there's any information out there on that.
Yeah, it almost seems like it had to be for this guy's responses to be as good as they are.
And count the nerve pinches in this episode. By the way, they break the rule.
Yeah,
there was that 1 nerve pinch per episode rule.
Yeah,
and we had several here.
We had a new producer at this point, so I wonder if that was like an edict that had come down from an earlier producer. I don't remember if that came from the network or...
Now, you know what else I find really interesting about this episode? There's a couple of things that were in that room that I find kind of puzzling.
The pinball machine.
There's pinball machines, there's slot machines, and not only that, but we're on a completely foreign planet, but their playing cards are exactly the same as our Earth playing cards. Jacks, kings, queens... I just find it interesting that the cards would be exactly the same. it's interesting that they didn't just try to invent some sort of a new game that would be sort of mysterious, but they instead they opted to pick a set of cards that would be familiar to the viewers. There's Nerve Pinch number 2, by the way.
To a woman.
Yep. Who didn't do anything. And he gently rests her head down.
That might be the first time he ever did the Nerve Punch on a woman in that I can remember.
I think you might be right.
Goodness.
But so that's 2 Nerve Pinches in one episode.
Yeah, with probably within a minute of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness, they could have dealt with that lady so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the easiest way. But, it's funny that there's a lot of other opportunities that Spock would have in this episode to use the Nerve Pinch, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
So, very strange. So they're operating this old radio and getting back in touch with the Enterprise. And it's funny, the Enterprise is able to lock in on them using that radio signal.
Yeah, well, I think maybe since they had gotten that new transmission, or the Horizons transmission, Uhura knew maybe how to key in on that better.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. So, but when they first turned the radio on, there was this funny little commercial that was playing, for some kind of boom boom firearm products. Kind of reminded me of the original RoboCop movie with all the funny parody commercials they had in that. So that was a pretty a nice little memory jog for me there.
Definitely
brought back something else I really liked. They keep calling Kirk and his crew the Feds.
Yeah. So here we've got, of course, Victor Tayback.
Yep.
As Krakow. Died in 1990 at the age of 60. And I think most of us know him as Mel.
Oh, yeah.
In the TV show Alice, but also from the film Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Mm-hmm. But also, in a kind of weird quasi Star Trek connection, he starred on the short-lived 1975 TV series Khan. Spelled spelled the same way, but with an exclamation point. It ran for 4 episodes. It was about an Asian like private eye.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if any of those episodes are on YouTube.
Yeah. 4 episodes. I mean, that's one of those legendary crash and burn series.
Yeah, he was one of those guys. My mother loved Alice, and I remember. And didn't they also have the Mel's Place? Wasn't there, or was that just the name of the place?
It's possible,
but
I mean, back then they loved spinoffs. I mean,
I remember, knowing him from that show, and then seeing him in a Star Trek episode, and kind of saying, "Oh, hey, that's kind of cool that he was in this other series." And I hadn't even thought about it until I saw him there, and I was a little kid at the time, so it was quite amusing. Having known him as Mel and then seeing him in a Star Trek episode.
Yeah. So we've learned now that Krakow and Oxmix are like 2 rival bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And really, there's an ongoing street war between the 2 of them. Yes. Or turf war.
And there are other bosses, lesser bosses out there who also control their own smaller territories. But I guess Oxmix and Krakow are the 2 big crime bosses.
Yeah. Like an East Side, West Side thing.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I think Krakow's building said South Side, didn't it? So maybe it's North and South.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Krakow wants some heaters.
Yeah, a lot of
the phasers.
Yeah, a lot of great mob dialogue.
Unless you make with the heaters.
Yeah, put them on ice. Yeah. So the thing about this episode that kind of bugs me a little bit though is it's pretty much they get caught, they escape, they get caught, they escape, they get caught, they escape, and it's over and over and over again. It seems like they just spin their wheels a lot, and they go from comedic moment to comedic moment, and just keep getting captured over and over again. And you'd think, Spock would be smart enough not to get recaptured, but no, he's not. And then, then Kirk and Spock get recaptured again, and oh, good Lord. But there's a couple of cool little escape tactics they use. I mean, Kirk ripping apart this old radio, and he's going to uncoil this wire here, make a tripwire across the door.
Mm-hmm. So this episode, though, really sort of speaks to the Federation's non-interference protocol.
Yeah, at least now they're really trying to define it more.
Yeah.
And stick to it more than they did in earlier episodes.
Mm-hmm. Which is really what drives this whole episode along, is the fact that Kirk feels like the Federation is responsible for how this planet ended up.
Right. So, instead of going down there and, stunning everybody and fixing whatever they need to fix, they're trying to work through it in a slightly more diplomatic fashion.
Yeah.
And not go in there and use their technology to try to change that society into what they think it should be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure even what they're trying to change it into at this point, but and the funny thing is their mission is to repair what damage was done. They don't really do that though.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's almost impossible to.
Yeah.
It's like almost like trying to, I guess, put the genie back in the bottle.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, how do you undo this without really time traveling?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Spock could mind meld with each person and try to alter their personalities.
Yeah. But this is also an entire culture that has developed over time that they're basing everything on the teachings of this gangster book.
Yeah.
So it seems like it would be even that much more challenging to change habits.
Yeah, well, the one thing that they don't address in this episode is this the entire planet is this way, or is just one area of this planet is this way?
Excellent point.
Yeah, because I can't imagine that the entire planet would be subject to this type of behavior. But I mean, I can see wherever the Horizon had set down. I mean, that area of settlement there, maybe like one city or a large like country landmass, but I can't see this having spread across the entire planet.
Yeah. Oof.
So
Kirk just doing a number on these goons.
You know what's funny though is that they have this book that they base their society on, but I mean, does that book have the details on how to make all those guns and what kind of clothes they wore? I mean, how to make those clothes and how to make the radios and all of that stuff. I mean, they seem to get a lot of information that you wouldn't think would be in that book.
Yeah, like too bad for maybe the remastered effects. They could have put like a DVD copy of like the original Scarface down there as well.
Yeah, just sitting on the guy's desk. Yeah, Oxmix has a Scarface poster on the wall. You got to imagine that the Scarface has got to be in the Enterprise archives, right? They have to have a copy of the movie somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So McCoy and Spock now they beamed back into a trap again.
Yeah, beamed right into it.
Oy vey.
And now we have Spock giving a log.
Yep. And that's a shame. And there's more phasers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's ripping their phasers off. So I guess if he could just, like he says, he could just keep ripping phasers off their belts and he wouldn't need them to give him weapons anymore. But now he's got 2 phaser 2s.
Yeah.
As opposed to just the phaser 1s they had before.
And we've talked about the phaser technology and the idea of what kind of power source really drives these. So does Oxmix at this point really have an unlimited supply of phaser here, or will that unit eventually need a recharge of some kind? I
would imagine so. I think they do need to be recharged in some way, shape, or form. I don't think they've introduced that concept yet. They've introduced the concept of discharging the phasers.
Yeah.
In the Galileo 7. But one other interesting note about this scene happened a minute or two ago before McCoy and Spock beamed down. One of Oxmix's henchmen said, "They can't do nothing until they finish sparkling." So I thought that was an interesting reference, saying that they can't draw their weapons until they're finished materializing.
Yeah.
So therefore, if they're beaming into a scenario where you're expecting them, you can easily have your weapons pointed directly at them before they can even do anything.
Yeah.
So they haven't really made mention of their inability to move or otherwise do anything while they're in transport. And that actually changes later.
Right.
In the movies, you'll see them talking and moving while they're in transport. And even having other people jump on them as they're transporting.
Come on. Is that a dig on the voyage home?
Well, I'm just saying, that's a rule that changes.
Yeah. Second voyage home reference this episode as well.
Yeah. Check that out. So I love how easily Kirk assimilates into the mobster culture.
Yeah, yeah, and the suits both fit nice as well.
Yeah, great pinstripes.
Yeah, that's an iconic
and a
suit
great
there.
matching hat.
Yeah,
but
this is hilarious. Kirk trying to drive this car, not knowing
absolutely.
where the starter is, and then not really knowing how to work the clutch and the gear shift.
And here's Spock to come save the day. He has studied these types of vehicles and knows that it's called a clutch and is one of the pedals on the floor, and he knows exactly what to do. And there you go, looking very satisfied.
Yeah. Now this isn't a time travel episode per se.
No.
But
Kinda
it's
is.
episodes like these that sort of makes a movie like The Voyage Home feel like it belongs, because I know a lot of people have different feelings on The Voyage Home. I personally really, really, really like that movie, but that movie's got a lot of comedy in it as well. So it's cool to have original series episodes that sort of are in that same family in terms of genre of story.
Interesting point. Yeah, I can see where this would pave the way for The Voyage Home, definitely.
Yeah.
Although The Voyage Home was more of the contemporary time that the movie was released in.
Mm-hmm.
This was about 40 years before the viewers who were watching it in the 60s.
Yeah.
So but you would think a lot of them would be familiar with that time from their childhoods, maybe.
Yeah, but it still deals with that fish out of water aspect.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kirk fits in pretty easily for a fish out of water.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love this kid. This kid with a switchblade in his hand.
This is a great sequence, and this is where we really get an idea of how this society is developed. So the kid instantly knows that something's going on. He says, "What are you doing to hit?"
He's not a bad actor, that kid, either. No,
not at all. And he basically helps them get into this building they need to get into.
Yeah. He may actually, now that I'm thinking about it, he may be the best child actor they had on the original series. Compare him to the kids from Miri.
Oh, what about little Clint Howard?
Compare him to Clint Howard. Because Clint Howard didn't even do his own dialogue. That was overdubbed.
Yeah, but I don't know. He had to do that whole Tranya scene.
He barely made it through that, man. He barely made it through that. And look at the kids from And the Children Shall Lead. I don't know, dude. I think this kid might be the best child actor on the series.
Yeah.
I might have to come back to this one and look at this when we get done with the third season.
We'll have to do we'll have to start keeping track of all the youth performances.
Yeah, check him out. Now he's gonna cause a diversion here. He's stabbing garbage cans. He's like, swashing a knife around. He's doing a good job, man.
Yeah.
So look at these freaking mobsters with those weird styrofoam hats on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell they're the minor guys. They don't get the real good costumes.
Yeah. Oh, and then the kid fakes an injury.
Yep. And Kirk's gonna pretend he's the kid's father, who's running. Now, of course, they stash their guns in the car first.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd need those guns, but I guess they have phasers as well, so maybe they don't actually need those guns.
Sonny.
Yep. See here's another third nerve pinch.
I love the guy went wide-eyed, which
third nerve pinch though. So that is definitely a first.
Yeah, I hadn't noted how many there were.
Yeah, man, 3. Mm-hmm. So
And
we
that,
did. Oh, go ahead.
That sequence with the kid was actually our first instance of him saying a piece of the action. He was going to cut a kid in for the piece of the action.
Yep. Actually, I think they say it multiple times too.
Yeah.
So it's repeated. Now there's the phasers.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's amazing they don't immediately stun Krakow.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they let him just bluster for a minute and distract them from the guys that are coming up behind him. But I thought it was funny. I mean, you'd think the minute their whole point of going there was to get Krakow, and you think they just fire immediately upon seeing him and drag him back out to the car. But little oversight there.
Yeah.
Little oversight.
Yeah. So and now they know that somebody's got the drop on them.
Yep. Another comedic moment where they turn around and you got the two guys behind him. Now, you'd think that the phaser is a much faster firing device than a machine gun. They could have easily just got a quick blast off and dived out of the way.
Yeah, and you don't even know what their order was.
No, exactly. And honest, they've never seen weapons like those phasers before. They don't know what it looks like when you're about to fire one.
Mm-hmm.
If you've watched them in the past, it's kind of for phaser one, it's sort of a finger roll over the top to start firing it, right?
Yeah, and you could even hold it down by your hip.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just turned around and looked at the guys and just quickly rolled and shoot, take a quick shot, would have been all over. But I don't know. But this is great because Kirk is not afraid of these guys at all. Did you notice that? He keeps going with this mobster shtick. And he plays it so well. Like, there's not a moment where he's actually looks like he's afraid for his life. He's completely confident. Look, he grabs Krakow by the lapel, grabs the phasers right back out of his hand.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, and that's it. Now he's gonna run his game, saying the Federation's is coming in to take over.
Yeah.
So this is a great ploy by Kirk, and he instantly goes into this mobster speak mode.
Mm-hmm. Whole ball of wax.
Another great performance by Shatner in my mind.
Yeah, and here's another drop of a piece of the action.
And a minuscule, and I love how Spock has to start dumbing down his dialogue. So instead of in speaking in his normal manner, he's got to say it twice.
Yeah. To
make sure they understand what he's talking about.
Yeah, and it's funny here. Krakow brings up the whole non-interference directive.
Yes. Yes, so that they're well aware. I guess from the Horizon must have drilled that into their heads that there's a non-interference law.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, because that was their experience with the other ship, and that's how they knew, that this new ship, the Enterprise, would have this superior technology and hatch that plan to try to the Oxmex hatch the plan to make the deal for the heaters.
Yeah, I wonder how much the book and comic book sort of universe went into this episode. I wonder if there's books devoted to the original series history of this planet and maybe the story of the Horizon. I didn't even think to look that up when I was doing research for this episode.
I'm pretty sure that I read that there are comic books and novels that are Star Trek related that deal with the continuations of the Ioshan people.
Mm-hmm.
So I must confess I haven't read them, so
yeah,
I'm not sure how they go. But here's another great comedy moment where Kirk is speaking in mobster speak to Scotty.
Yeah,
and Uhura no less. And notice who else is missing from this episode.
Well, Sulu?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Sulu
that
again.
Green Berets was keeping him busy, huh?
Yeah, man. Most of the second season he seems to be out.
Yeah, man.
It's a shame.
They must have been paying him a good deal of money to do that Green Berets.
Yeah, you would think. He must. And that allowed for Chekhov to really step in and shine,
Yeah.
So he just kind of steals some of his thunder. So this is great. So Kirk is ordering. He's kind of making some dummy orders, and trying to speak in code to Scotty to make him to beam up Krakow. He says he's 12 feet in front of me.
Yeah.
And they're going to beam Krakow up to the ship. So I guess Kirk is starting to hatch his plan to get all of the bosses together.
Yeah.
Another great comedy moment.
Yeah, and Spock looks so cool in the suit, man.
He does.
The scene, the shot where a little earlier he was seated. Yeah, right here.
There you go.
I mean, he just looks sharp in that suit, the hat with the pointy ears, and just the skin tone. Just what a great look.
Yeah, this is another episode like City on the Edge of Forever where you get to see them in clothing from another time period.
Yeah,
and it looks pretty cool. So it's something that you're not used to seeing. So they clean up well.
Yeah.
So they all got the drop on Krakow. And Krakow intelligently guesses that that's Scotty that walked in.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the concept of, the starship isn't as mind-blowing to these people because like stated earlier, they dealt with the horizon. Yeah,
and the funny thing is, well, I don't know if they were ever on the horizon or not. I'm not sure if that was ever established, but if you watch, look, a movie like First Contact, they beam up that woman from the camp onto the ship, and she is
she's terrified.
Terrified and awestruck by being on this spaceship. And I'm sure you and I, if we mysteriously appeared on a spaceship, we'd be pretty freaked out too.
Well, I don't know if me and you would be.
I don't know. I guess it depends on what the aliens look like. Yeah. If they were those little gray dudes from all of those movies, man, I'd probably be pretty freaked out.
Yeah.
But if there were people in red and yellow and blue outfits, I probably wouldn't be as freaked out.
Yeah. And here we got a goon who realizes that he'd been knocked out again.
Yeah, there happens to be other guys just right out in the hallway that haven't come in to check on them at all.
Yeah.
They just stayed out there. Oh, no, they're all just waking up too.
Yeah, the one guy's rolling his arm there. I guess he's the one that got the nerve pinch.
Yeah. Do all mobsters wear the same hat?
Yeah, they're like the... that style of hat. I used to have a hat like that when I was a kid, the styrofoam hat. I think it was like... a political hat of some kind.
Yeah, I was just about to say, they look like the ones they hand out at political rallies.
Yeah.
The older political rallies where, the hat was just kind of a styrofoam hat and,
yeah,
it had whatever campaign on it. Look at McCoy with the Tommy gun.
Yeah, he looks like, a little bit of a badass.
But McCoy doesn't get a suit.
No, and he calls him Sawbones.
Yeah, this is the only episode where he actually calls him by that full name, Sawbones.
Yeah.
So Kirk's still running his mobster shtick.
Spocko.
A lot of funny moments in this.
Yeah.
So this is the only episode in which the Enterprise phasers are set to stun.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. So the Ultimate Computer, which is an episode coming up very soon, they set the phasers to 1/100th power, which is similar to stun, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is the only one where they actually order the phasers on the Enterprise set to stun.
Mm-hmm. You would think 1/100th power for a ship the size of the Enterprise would still be lethal to, just a normal person.
Yeah, you probably would. But especially coming from the ship.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, from a hand phaser, you can think, okay, probably wouldn't be lethal, but from the ship, I mean, that's got to be much more powerful.
Oh, heck yeah.
Than the hand phaser. So, we're about to see another Star Trek first.
Oh, okay.
In this episode. And can you guess what it is? Something you've been looking for a long time.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
You've been bringing this up.
Really?
Yeah, you've been bringing this up a lot, and here you go. No? Not getting it?
No.
It's the first site-to-site transport.
Oh, right.
Without a transporter pad.
Okay, yeah.
So Scotty transported the guy that was on the other end of the phone.
On the other end of the phone, right.
Into Oxmix's office. So you got your first site-to-site transport.
Excellent.
Yep. So now we've established that it's possible.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I kind of
always
feel
love to
silly
see
that I missed it.
firsts. Yeah, I'm a big fan of these series firsts.
Yeah.
So that was cool. There's another series first coming up at the end of this episode, by the way.
Mm.
I won't ruin it for you, but I'll let you know that it's coming.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Now we've got all the mobsters have been site to site transported into the same room.
Yeah.
Some of them apparently were in their bedclothes.
Yes.
Yeah, long underwear. 2 of them are in long underwear. That's great. I love Kirk standing on the pool table.
Yeah.
This is a classic moment where he's kind of, he's laying out what the new order is going to be. I love how easily Kirk fits into that mold.
Yeah.
Shatner really does a great job of transforming from Kirk into the mobster and then kind of back again when he's talking, over the radio to Scotty here.
Yeah.
A little while. It's really fun. As far as comedy Star Trek goes, I like this episode comedically the best.
Oh, totally.
This to me has the most good laughs. And the funny thing is that this episode could easily be seen as like a campy episode, kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but it doesn't really play out that way to me.
No.
Yeah, it definitely feels like I can still take it kind of seriously, even though obviously it's meant to be comedy.
Oh, yeah.
So great job on the writing, great job on the acting, the directing. It's all great. Everybody seems to fit into their roles really well.
Yeah, so we might as well talk about the writing real quick. The initial, I guess, the actual story credit after Gene Roddenberry's one-word pitch is credited to Gene Kuhn and David P. Harmon, and David P. Harmon wrote the teleplay himself. He also wrote The Deadly Years, and we're going to see his work upcoming on The Eye of the Beholder. He also wrote 5 episodes of Gilligan's Island, 6 episodes of The Brady Bunch, and 4 episodes of Ironside.
Wow. Pretty good credits.
Yeah.
Pretty good credit. And, see how easily McCoy got disarmed here.
Yeah.
It's a shame. He's always the weak link.
Yeah. But it doesn't really matter because this is where they're going to get to put on their show, really.
Yeah. But, it's funny to me that Krakow lets Kirk have his last request and lets him call the ship.
Yeah, you know what? It almost seems like a huge misstep knowing from a technology standpoint what they're capable of.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. And especially because you hear what Kirk is saying here. He actually says, put the ship's phasers on stun and fire on a 1-block radius around my coordinates. So Krakow just heard him say that.
Yeah, but Kirk didn't say heaters.
That's true. He did say phasers. But I don't know. I think they'd be smart enough to, and there it goes.
Boom.
I like the remastered version of that. They didn't change it a huge amount.
Yeah.
But they got rid of the Batman style starburst looking things that happened there.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool. So good show. They knocked out everybody in the street with the phasers. So we've seen the ship's phasers being used on stun.
Yeah, and they're making a point to indicate that the goons outside were not killed.
Yes. So and they said he could have killed him if he wanted to, though.
Yes.
They're only dead because they didn't want them. They would be dead if they wanted them to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
So great stuff. Great stuff. So I guess this is pretty much starting to wrap up the plot line here. So Kirk is now set up the Federation to get a 40% cut of this new syndicate with Oxmix in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So they assume Kirk is going to be in charge, but Kirk says, no. It's like, I'm too important, to run a little, a tiny shop like yours. So I'm just going to take my 40% cut. And Oxmix is in charge, and Krakow is his lieutenant, which I thought was kind of unfair. I mean, I don't know why Oxmix is more qualified to run the show than Krakow is.
Yeah.
Especially since Oxmix was the one that double-crossed him first.
Yeah. And then also Kirk says they'll be back in a year to collect their cut. Now, how long do you think they would not come back before the Iosians would just say, well, obviously the Federation's not coming back to check on us. We can start acting out again.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know. Well, Kirk is going to set this up where the Federation, Spock's going to point out the Federation would frown on taking a 40% cut of a criminal operation. And Kirk says that he'll set it up in a way that 40% is going to go into some kind of a trust fund to help the Iosian society out.
Yeah.
So everybody's got objections, but Kirk's got his own ideas on how to handle it all.
Yeah, and I guess here's Spock running down the fact that there's going to be a starship checking in every year.
Yeah, and Kirk seems to come up with this little proposal kind of off the cuff.
Yeah.
But so they're kind of admitting that they couldn't fix the damage that was done to the society, but Kirk is going to use the funds to do that over time.
Yeah. And now this leads us right into what has to be, this is like a straight up sitcom ending.
Yes.
It almost made me feel like that Leslie Nielsen show, the Naked Gun.
Yes.
You know, where at the end of every episode, they always did that, you know, the big laugh, and then they would freeze.
Yep. And that is another Star Trek first. And only. This is the only Trek episode to end in a freeze frame.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it definitely has a unique feel to it.
It does. It does. And I guess that's, you know, part of the comedic aspect is ending it with a freeze frame, so the audience at home is kind of a knee slapper.
Yes.
Oh, that was great. Well, I guess we've made it pretty much to the end.
Yeah.
Of the episode, so I suppose it's time for essential voting.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I'll take a stab.
Go for it.
I am going to go on and say that I think this is an essential episode. I think if you factor in the cocktail party
I
factor,
knew you were going cocktail party on this.
but not even that. I think that this episode is the first time they really sort of got deep into the non-interference / prime directive, you know, attempts to at least start to define it and explain it. So I think from that perspective, this is also an important episode.
Okay. Well, I have to admit, as much as I like this episode, I came into this not knowing which way I was going to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a tough time. I was scratching my head. Is the first site-to-site transport enough on its own? I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not. Are the Enterprise phasers set to stun and stunning a mass spread of people enough? I don't know. But I think your emphasis on the fleshing out of the non-interference policy may be enough to tip the scale.
Oh,
For me, I hadn't really thought about that.
yeah.
I know we've talked about the non-interference law before, but always in the context of, well, they're really not following it, are they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of throwing it out the window again. But in this one, they really seem to do a lot to stick to it, and the whole episode is pretty much them getting tripped up by the fact that they have to stick to this law.
Right.
So it does a lot to familiarize the audience with that concept and the lengths that the crew will go to maintain that ethic.
Yeah.
So I guess with all of that stuff rolled up together, I think in my mind, at least, that's enough to make this essential in my mind.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to make it essential, and I was racking my brain. So I'm glad that you brought up that non-interference portion.
All right, very cool.
So all right, looks like a double essential for a piece of the action.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with special guest Ken Mills and Bryan Taylor. And here we are back for our post-episode discussion. And we'd like to bring back and welcome back to the show Ken Mills, who you know from the podcast and more recently, Zilch, the Monkeys podcast, which has just exploded. And me and Jeff co-host that show as well. So, Ken, welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions.
Why, thank you, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be anywhere. And you probably could have said that the Zilch podcast is wildly successful.
It really is. I'm amazed at where it's gone in the past month or so since it debuted. It's been hanging on the iTunes charts, the new and notable, and it's definitely really great to see something that you're involved in do so well, because you know that we all do this for the sort of the love of it, as cliched as that is. So to see people respond to it, it really makes all the work that goes into it that much more satisfying.
And Mickey Dolenz retweeting, which is a different thing. Your show is pretty cool. That'd be like Leonard Nimoy retweeting this one. So
yeah, we can only dream. So and also today we have with us friend of Ken Mills, friend of the show now, and I guess friend of Craig and Jeff. We have with us Bryan Taylor. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here today. Glad for the opportunity.
Excellent. So, Bryan, before we get into sort of our piece of the action discussion, could you give us just a little bit of your Star Trek history, how you got started with the show, and where you've sort of gone with it over the years, and where you are with it now?
Okay. Well, I started out basically with when I was a kid. During the, I'm old enough to have been to remember the original run of the show. I was actually pretty small at the time, but I was involved with the. I remember watching the program on when it originally ran, and being afraid of it. I would run to the other room and watch it from the other, around the wall and watch it, and I couldn't stand not to watch it. But some things would scare me. I remember being that way.
Yeah.
But as time went on, of course, as I got to be a little bit older, when they started running in syndication, I really got to where I related a lot to the show. I always wanted to be Kirk. I would be when I'd go out and be outside doing whatever I was playing, and pretending to be. Usually I was Kirk doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that he was just the man I wanted to be, which was kind of strange, now that I think about it. But
not really. I mean, Kirk really was Elvis in space.
And I just got really intrigued with it all, with space, with the show, the way the show was done. I just enjoyed the idea of it, and over the years, just kind of continually watch it when it would be on television, and continue to do that. When the DVD series came out, I purchased those. I really never bought any of the VHS. I actually have a couple of the old VHSs. I had the trouble with tribbles on VHS and things, but when the DVD release originally came out, I purchased all those, and I've kind of kept up with it ever since. If you saw I'm sitting in my office right now, and I have a Enterprise Fathead behind me, and I have a plushie Spock from Mirror Mirror sitting on my bookshelf, along with a set of Star Trek glasses with characters' pictures on them, and just different things sitting on my shelves. And I wouldn't call myself a full-blown Trekkie or Trekker, but I'm a big fan of the show. Always have been.
All right. Well, you're probably going to be branded one after your appearance on this show, Bryan. So be prepared.
I understand.
Well, my question is, Bryan, which do you love more, Star Trek or Bacon?
I don't really want to have to make that choice, Ken. Bacon is just has been a love of my life even longer than Star Trek has. But
this is Bryan's Kobayashi Maru.
Ah, there you go.
Don't make me make this choice. I'm not sure what I would do. I'll probably have to just die rather than choose. Wow. Like the robot on the android lady on the later episode. Just I can't make the choice. I'll just die.
So Bryan, are you pretty much just an original series guy, or did you get on board with some of the other series?
Primarily original series. I followed the original series, and the movies all the way through. I have watched quite a bit of Next Generation, but I wouldn't call myself the same type of fan of the Next Generation as I was or am of the original series. I've watched a lot of DS9, a lot of Enterprise. I've watched all of them, just about. Voyager is probably I've watched the least of that, and I like all of them. But as far as being able to tell you much about the canon or who all these characters really are and what their background is, I really don't relate to most of them like I do the original series.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you something about Brian in my personal life. Brian is my Sunday school teacher.
Oh, okay.
And the problem with that is you get two guys like Brian and I in the same room. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. At some point, Star Trek is mentioned. He's actually got this one checkered shirt.
Or bacon.
Or bacon, yeah, bacon Trek, Star Trek. Anyway, but there's this one shirt that he has that's dark blue with like cross up and down lines, and it looks like the holodeck. And I've actually referred to that in front of the class as his holodeck shirt. So, but true story.
So, Brian, since you're an original series fan, favorite character and episode of the original series, if you'd be so kind?
Oh, well, I've already mentioned Kirk. Kirk is my favorite character. And as a matter of fact, when people started making fun of Shatner later, I was like almost offended by that. Why are you making fun of Shatner? Of course, now I understand why people talk about his overacting and stuff. But I always enjoyed Kirk, and of course, I like all of them. Spock has always intrigued me. Now, I'm an engineer by trade, and that's my training and what I do. And Scotty always was. I loved when Scotty's the hero. When he jumps in there and he gets the transporter working at the last second or whatever he does to get the warp engines working again. That always intrigued me, and I probably has even influenced me somewhat in the direction I took with my career just a little bit. But Kirk was my favorite. As far as episodes are concerned, probably the ones that everybody else really likes. I like the Doomsday Machine quite a bit. That's probably one of the top two. And the Romulan episode. What's the name of the Romulan episode? Why can't I remember that? The Balance of Terror.
And of course, another episode that you're fond of is A Piece of the Action, which is why we have you guys on here today. So, Brian, what is it about A Piece of the Action that draws you to this episode?
Well, I've always appreciated the comedy episodes that they've had on the series. I always thought they were, I liked it when they kind of took that turn and you got to see a different side to the characters. This episode is, it's just funny on its surface. It's one of those that almost doesn't bear really close scrutiny. If you really want to get too, get to looking too close, you start seeing things that you kind of question. But I really like the way Spock handles things in this. And you actually see Spock make a mistake or two in this episode, and it kind of shows him in another light. And I find all that really entertaining. I really like that.
Oh, cool. Ken, what draws you to this episode?
Well, it's just great to see Kirk wear a pimp hat. He's really ballin'. He's got a lot of swag about him. Like I said earlier, he's kind of Elvis in space, and it's just great seeing him do, for lack of a better term, his James Cagney, if you will. It's just a fun episode. There are a couple characters that really tick me off, though.
All right, well, we'll get to that. Are there any standout scenes in the episode, Ken, that sort of are scenes that you look forward to when you watch the episode?
Well, this is the famous Fizbin scene.
Yes.
Which is similar, to bring up the monkeys, the Kriebich.
Yes.
It's the same thing, basically.
Extremely similar.
Yeah, and of course Vic Tayback was on both of those shows, so that's pretty cool. But just the fact that probably my favorite scene is when Kirk is trying to drive the vehicle and Spock is like mocking him the entire time. I just love that part. Yeah. Brian, any standout scenes for you?
Oh, the scene he just mentioned when they're in the old Cadillac trying to drive it is probably my favorite. The entire interaction between Kirk and Spock at that point I love that. That's my favorite in the whole show.
Yeah. And Ken, you had mentioned to me real quick before we jumped on here that this episode has a first and only for the original series, and it's related to that scene. Can you expand on that for us?
Well, from my understanding, when Kirk and Spock borrow the old-fashioned Earth-style car, I think it's the only time in the original series that any character is seen or depicted using ground transportation. So, I don't know if that makes it essential or not, but by the way, what was your vote?
It was a double essential.
It was a double essential with a last-minute essential pull from Jeff Hewlett.
Well, I always say that if it's essential for JJ, it will definitely be rebooted. So that's his vote.
So, looking at this episode beyond the crew members on here, are there any Who would be your favorite non-crew member character, Ken?
I kind of like Bella Oxmix.
Yeah, I mean, both of the big gang bosses are both real highlights in this episode. Brian?
I actually kind of like Teppo just because he asks for his mother when he gets brought to the. He kind of impressed me with that, so he's my favorite in this case.
Now, one thing this episode really sort of is built around is this gangster quote unquote Bible. Me and Jeff sort of talked about it on our commentary, but we were curious to sort of get your thoughts on how much of an impact a book like this realistically would have on a society, and just any other overall feelings about that book, if you want to take a shot at it, Brian.
When and this is what I was mentioning earlier, but if you overanalyze this show, some of the things to kind of start thinking about, and I thought, how detailed did this book have to be for those guys to so completely duplicate gangland Chicago? I mean, you've got that right down to the clothing and the patterns in the streets, but the idea of them being influenced by a book this way is intriguing. I don't know if I don't know how realistic it really is, but I think the idea that they gravitated to one and they looked at it and said, well, here's something that works. Let's imitate that. That's interesting. I think it's interesting that it became their Bible. I mean, there's actually, copies of it in both of the big bosses' offices, and on display there. That it obviously is their Bible. It's their way they look at it, and I can see that. I can see them reading the book, someone reading the book and getting the idea that this might be a good idea. The fact that it propagated through the entire society of this planet is an interesting thought, though.
Yeah. Ken, anything from your end?
Well, I could understand if the book had like a audio video wave or a DVD or something that had like a bunch of Cagney movies and stuff like that. It would make sense. But
we mentioned that on the commentary that they should have had like the remaster. They should have dropped in like a copy of Scarface.
Exactly. And then why not Scarface or The Godfather? But those were not yet thought of in that sense. Those were not produced yet. So because otherwise it would have been like Marlon Brando bad imitations instead of bad Cagney imitations. So. Yeah, so I'm not really sure how they picked up the whole like, listen here, you mugs, that kind of thing. I'm not sure how they did that, but boy, Kirk, he seems to really enjoy this time. He just eats up scenery and he loves it. And I love that there's the scene where basically they've got the guns on Kirk and he's like, put away your pieces and all that, and then he like hops up on the pool table.
Yeah.
Like he's got major cojones, you know what I mean? He goes from like having a gun pointed at him basically to like not only running the show but standing up on a guy's new pool table. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty cool.
Who knew that Kirk would be such a good cosplayer?
But Spock really looks cool in that suit.
Did you guys discuss him suddenly taking on this accent and start speaking the way they spoke? Did you guys talk about that much? I mean, I just found that very interesting. Why would you? They already know how you talk. Why would you suddenly change to match them? I didn't totally follow that whole deal, but I loved it when Spock did that one phrase. I was advised just to keep dialing, Oxmix. I loved that. That's just awesome.
So killer. That is funny as all get out. Love it.
I have one other quick question. You mentioned the pool table. Did the book not tell you how to play pool?
Exactly.
I think that there was just a picture of a pool table in the book, and they figured we'll just have this sitting here. I'm not sure that they really knew what it was all about.
Oxmix seems to not mind what ball he was hitting with his cue and where he placed them on the table. I just found it quite interesting. It must not have gone into great detail about how to make a Tommy gun, but not how to play pool.
Yeah, unless as the boss, he's like, hey, anything goes.
There you go. That's probably it.
I just won the game, guys. It's not like they're going to badmouth him or anything. But then again, they didn't know how to play Fizbin, so maybe they don't know how to shoot pool.
Yeah.
I don't think Kirk knew how to play Fizbin.
No. But I think that's one of the weird things that makes this an essential episode is the whole Fizbin thing.
Yeah.
I've heard it at drunken parties throughout my life. And eventually somebody brings it up, so...
I found it quite amusing that it was their mission on the planet to try to fix this society that had been influenced by the Horizon that had essentially violated the non-interference law, but they don't actually wind up fixing the planet at all. They just kind of leave it the way it was.
They make it worse. As a matter of fact, you mentioned that Dr. McCoy leaving behind his tool there. Marvel Comics published a sequel story to this episode as part of their Star Trek Unlimited series. The story, A Piece of the Reaction, featured the crew of the USS Enterprise E from Star Trek First Contact 1996, returning to the planet to discover its society had in fact gone on to model itself after 23rd century Starfleet, thanks to the communicator that Dr. McCoy left behind. The planet is now led by the tough kid Kirk and Spock met in the street.
That's awesome.
Who wishes to hijack the Enterprise E and finally gain command of the starship just like his idol, James T. Kirk.
That's
Oh,
actually
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. I'll have
That
to seek that
seems
out.
like it sounds like it's worth a look.
Take that, JJ. No, I mean that. Take that, JJ. And do that.
That would be kind of a cool movie.
Yeah, I could hang with it. By the way, Craig and Jeff, you guys are excellent Star Trek podcasters, but as taxi drivers, you just leave much to be desired. I've been saving that line all week. So we were talking about characters that you like or dislike. I'm wondering if it is Jabroni Week on the Enterprise. In the very first scene, the guy at Spock's station, he's in blue, and Kirk's doing his job, doing his thing, and the guy just looks like he's sitting there bored waiting for the time clock to roll over. You know what I mean? So,
I remember that guy.
yeah, he's just so annoying. But
And he's like sitting straight up too. He's got like a weird posture, right?
yeah, and he's kind of like, oh, it's almost 3. I got to get out of here. You know, where's he got to go? There's no holodeck. There's no Quark's bar there. You know what I'm saying? And there's another guy just behind Scotty. If you go to 12 minutes and 48 seconds in, this is when Spock's like, or Kirk's doing the things like, yeah, Scotty, get the heaters and all this stuff. And he's like, what? Heaters? What? You know, and all that stuff. And this guy's sitting there eavesdropping on Scotty the whole time instead of turning around and doing his job. I mean, I'm not sure what Spock does over there with those little lights and stuff, but I'm figuring it's pretty important, you know, so maybe he should be paying attention. I mean, Scotty's doing his job, but that guy really irritates me. Take a look for him. And then the other thing is the landing party upon beaming down to the planet does not look both ways. And you would figure after seeing Edith Keeler die and see the edge of forever that they might go, hey, we might want to check into this. Another thing is that Scotty, as advanced as they are, does not know what a heater is. So that kind of bothers me. And the last thing is that when Kirk takes the Federation cut and helps them to get over their gambling problem and work all that out, it's sort of like the state lottery putting in the advisory on the lottery tickets, like, you know, be careful when you're gambling and stuff like that. So those are just some important things I thought that were worth.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great points. So as we're closing out the episode, Ken, where can people find more about you on the internet?
Oh, I'm all over the place, and you've talked about me way too much. So instead of that time, I want to talk about the 5-year mission band. And those guys are great. Just want to say hello. And Craig Cohen turned me on to them. You as well, Jeff, through the Tricorder transmission. I am just digging their stuff, and I'm probably going to be purchasing some of their music. And I encourage people to check out the 5-year mission band.
Oh, thanks, Ken.
That's excellent. They really are amazing. And when you look at what they've done, for most bands, it's hard enough to write, you know, a full album's worth of songs, let's say 12 songs.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are already dozens and dozens of songs into their 5-year mission of writing a song based around every episode of Star Trek, the original series, and not only write songs, but good songs. So it really is amazing to sit down and listen to, you know, the skill level these guys operate out, but then also how they, you know, they're building songs around episodes of Star Trek. So it's really neat to listen to the lyrics and, you know, depending on the songwriter and the approach to their song, you know, the amount of detail they give in the lyrics. It's really, really cool.
Well, the fact that you can fit an entire 60-minute plot in a 2-minute and 58-second song is absolutely amazing. And then they make these really cool videos where Kirk and Spock sing, and it's just fantastic.
Oh, totally. Yeah. One example is in year 1, the song "The Enemy Within."
Mm-hmm.
they sort of abandon the complete plot rundown, and I'd say the last half of the song is a really sort of moving, repetitious dialogue portion where they're singing "I Want to Live," and
Yes.
it's really just, it's emotional. And when you think about the episode while listening to that song, it adds weight to the episode, and the song draws that emotion from the episode as well. So it's really like two mediums working together to create this sort of ultimate piece of art. It's really remarkable, and I'm glad you mentioned them, because I really can't get enough of what they're doing, and it's so great that they're out there doing what they're doing, and the more people that are turned on to them, I think the better we'll all be.
I agree. Great music, great fun, and great Star Trek. So there's nothing not to like. And as far as where I can be found, wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.
Bryan, where can people find more information about you?
Well, there's not a whole lot to find. You can find me on Twitter at Bryan D. Taylor, Bryan with a Y, Bryan D. Taylor. And there's some YouTube videos out there, a couple of them out there that I don't recommend anyone watch, but they're out there on YouTube. If you search for, actually, if you really want to see how poorly I do a video, you could search for Kevin is 40.
Can I tell the story?
I guess you can.
Bryan Taylor's one of those internet sensation guys, where like people will say, "Hey, check this guy out," or they'll pass it around at work and stuff like that. Bryan made this wacky video in honor of his brother's birthday, his brother's 40th birthday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wound up being on G4 after going viral. So Bryan is one of those guys.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
You should check it.
Wow.
Kevin turns 40, right? Is that the name of it?
Kevin is 40.
Kevin is 40.
It's not one of my finer moments, but there you go.
And I'm going to have to beam this chihuahua elsewhere as people are coming into the house. So I bid you all a fondue.
Yokiro Taco
All right,
Bell.
take. And real quick, Jeff, we can be found on Twitter at TTT_pod, and on Facebook at the Tricorder Transmissions, and online at the tricordertransmission.com.
The city streets of Chicago in this episode were actually known as the New York streets on the Paramount back lot. We also shot Miri and City on the Edge of Forever on the same streets. And over the years, they were dressed and redressed in countless films. Coincidentally, these buildings burned down during the shooting of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. It had nothing to do with us since we weren't using them, but all the same, it was sad to see this part of Hollywood history reduced to ashes. A piece of the action is considered one of the funniest episodes of Star Trek. It ranks right up there with The Trouble with Tribbles among fans' favorites. Of course, the thing I remember about shooting this episode is that I was always worried about losing my hat. I had difficulty keeping it comfortably seated on my head. I couldn't bring it down far enough because the tips of my ears kept hitting the brim. And that's why you won't see many felt hats on Vulcan.